Hey everybody, long time no see. Dano Griffiths here for Movie Marker. I hope you've all been keeping well and had a reasonably good start to 2022. At this moment in time, as I put this out, I'm currently in Glasgow for Glasgow Film Festival, slowly getting stuck into the programming. It's my second day here, I'm here for 6 days. So there will be written and possibly a couple of video reviews on the way from the festival. But right now, for this video review, last night was at a midnight screening of a comic book favourite of mine, the latest iteration of The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, who revitalised the Apes franchise in recent years. I think he brought a real heart, an emotional pull to a franchise that was sort of in the pits after a Tim Burton take many years ago, which didn't particularly go down well with Mark Wahlberg. But with The Batman, the standard is so high already. I mean, look at what Christopher Nolan achieved with the Dark Knight trilogy. And to do one so soon, of course, there's Batfleck as well, and the checkered history with all that. I mean, personally, the 4-hour Schneider cut of the Justice League, I was quite taken by. Obviously, the cut that got massacred, shall we say, by Joss Whedon, and all the happenings that's been going on with him in recent times sort of soured it further. But this particular take of the Batman, I mean, you only have to look at the trailers. The first one that we got with Comic-Con a good year or a year and a half ago now, if my memory serves me right. And we were immediately struck by this. I mean, people have joked it's a very emo take on the Batman with Robert Pattinson's Dark Circles. That was basically me at 3 o'clock this morning after I'd seen it. But this is such a distinctive film noir sort of take on the character. We had this sort of Michael Mann influenced saga with Chris Nolan, and you know there was riffs on Heat and those kind of crime sagas, and this time the Matt Reeves approach really embraces the idea instilled in the comics that Batman is the world's greatest detective. It's a proper procedural crime story that unfolds with Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne in his early years. There's no real business acumen. He doesn't want to delve into that side of his life that's sort of been passed down from his family. It sort of dodges a lot of the tropes that have been well explored previously, with obviously him losing his parents, being gunned down, and he's quite rough around the edges. There's no real refinement to how he's approaching this role of the Batman. He feels out of his depth despite his best efforts in Gotham City, where crime is on the uptick, which is exacerbated by Paul Dano's The Riddler. And what a departure from what we saw with Jim Carrey back in the 90s. This is such an unnerving, genuinely terrifying take on the character, and through his aesthetic as well. It's like some sort of boiler suit with a very just horrid mask that he sort of applies along with it. But he's not alone in causing havoc around Gotham. There's, of course, Colin Farrell's the Penguin. I mean, when you first saw him in the trailer, I mean, it was like, say what? That's Colin Farrell? But it's such a remarkable job that they've done with makeup and how they've brought this character to life. Of course, previously played by Danny DeVito in one of the Tim Burton versions of Batman, which is one, of course, the earlier ones on the big screen. So, and then there's Catwoman with Zoe Kravitz. There's chemistry for days with her and Pattinson. But she's, again, similar to Batman. She's not quite in her element yet. She's slowly discovering her, vigilante persona along with Arbats. So, with previous Batmans, there's a real sense of the character's quite well refined already. They're very headstrong and sure of their intentions. With these guys, probably at least from a heroic perspective, they haven't really quite grasped it yet. And they're being guided to a degree by Commissioner Gordon, played by the brilliant Jeffrey Wright. And of course, Andy Serkis is Alfred. And the dynamic between Alfred and Batman is quite, fractured this time compared to what we've seen previously. Because Alfred's really trying to apply the pressure on Bruce Wayne that, he can't carry on like this. He has to sort of intertwine the business persona with this vigilante character that he's trying to embody. And it is the whole film or ensemble are just amazing. For a slow burner approach, given it finished at like 3:20 this morning, it would have had to have gripped me from the get-go, considering I only travelled up yesterday to Glasgow. And thankfully, it right from the word go, from the opening gambit that's quite voyeuristic and Hitchcockian, and it completely throws you off. It's like nothing you've really ever seen in a Batman film. Ava Maria swells up, and that's sort of a running theme throughout it. And the procedural, the riddles that plays out, they're proper ingenuous, and the Riddler's games are, they're a diluted version, let's be honest. It's, even though it's a 15, it's not quite, Jigsaw Saw level in terms of the contraptions he puts some of his victims in. But it sort of pushes the boundaries as much as probably a Batman film has in terms of that sort of gritty realism and violence that's depicted. I think with this particular Batman film, and you'll probably be thinking I've gone mad, really, when you think about it, but I think this sort of picks elements from all the other previous incarnations and sort of marries them all together. Like the gothic sort of trappings of Tim Burton, but this sort of has more of a grungy feel to it and a haunting beauty to it, sort of lying underneath, and that's complemented by Michael Giacchino's stunning score. I was completely floored by it, and it really does mirror the character development that goes throughout it, particularly in the final act. I was genuinely moved by some of the narration alongside the score that Arbats has, talking about how scars sort of transform you, whether it's grief or just endurance of trying to achieve your goal of a better world, and it really, really hit the mark. And I think with the villains, they sort of have an inherent silliness. I know that probably sounds quite bizarre when you look at Paul Dano as the Riddler and Colin Farrell's Penguin, but there is a cartoonish nature to them, despite the gritty violence. But I think that mirrors the real world. You look at the villains of the modern world, and there is sort of a childish, cartoonish nature about them, but the acts that they carry out are genuinely quite sinister. And I think Paul Dano's the Riddler and Colin Farrell's Penguin are gloriously unhinged. I think they really mirror the world that we live in and who govern us and whatnot, and the corruption that is running rampant. There's a seductive turn from Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman. As I said, the chemistry with her and Arbats is just fantastic. I think particularly when there's teases of romance or, sexual tension in comic book films, they tend to be quite bone dry and beige, if that's the right word. But her and Pattinson, there's a proper, crackle with the dialogue and the exchanges that they have. But ultimately, there were such high expectations, and there always is when you take on the role of the Batman. And there was so much criticism swirling around when he first got the role, and there's still, even to this day, the talk of, he was in Twilight, he's not a good actor, blah, blah, blah. We've moved a hell of a long way since Robert Pattinson was in Twilight. Same with Kristen Stewart. You only have to look at her in Spencer in recent months, which is an extraordinary performance in itself, but obviously I don't want to run off on a tangent. But Robin Pattinson, Good Time, Lost City of Zeds, these High Life, the Claire Denis one as well. He's had such a wonderful, eclectic career, and he's really tested his mettle along with many greats. And I genuinely consider Matt Reeves in that category now, especially with what he's achieved here with the grungy aesthetic, the crime saga elements of Nolan. But I think he's really sort of flipped it in terms of having a stronger Batman perspective. It's like properly about him. It's not necessarily all the onus is on the villains, and with him being so rough around the edges and how he's contextualised in this, it's a fascinating character study into what it means to be Batman in this world. And Pattinson, the presence that he has, I mean, the sound design, I mean, and how he's framed as well. I mean, you've already seen in one of the trailers, you know, the car chase. I don't want to spoil that car chase, but he's incredible. It's one of the best car chases I've seen in quite some time. But I won't, spoil too much. You know, the way the camera's flipped, so you sort of see him from the perspective of Colin Farrell's Penguin. And, he's an imposing figure. And the sound design when he just steps, in the rain. And, he sort of says himself that he's the shadows. And you really do feel the fear that is locked within inside him as well. It sort of drives him along. But it runs through the narrative vein to complement him. And it just feeds into every aspect of the film. And I think the way it's all delivered through aesthetic, through score, through performance, it's just an amazing take again for the Batman. And I'm so thrilled that Pattinson has delivered, because I've been rooting for him from day one, and he very much delivers. And Matt Reeves, I know he's very keen to do another trilogy with this, like Nolan, and I'm fascinated to see where he takes it. I really, really am, given where he leaves it. And that's all I'm saying, because the third act is quite interesting, to say the least. And I think there's a real scope that can really be broadened upon with the characters that he's assembled here, and sort of the avenues that he sort of teases in the final act. But I'll say no more than that for now. So, not like you need much encouragement from me to see the Batman, but I highly urge you to consider it. I think just as a comic book film, I think for me, it's like the comic book version of David Fincher's Zodiac. I think it has that sort of feel, an element of fear and second guessing and ingenuity to the mystery of it that I was just completely enthralled by. And to keep me locked in like that, especially at that time of night, given I travelled for 4 hours up here, was quite a feat in itself. So I'm just beyond thrilled on how it's turned out. But I'm going to shut up now. This is my video review of The Batman. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed it, and it's lovely reconnecting with you all. There will be reviews, of course, on Movie Marker, www.moviemarker.co.uk. Follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page, and whatnot. But there's many reviews still to come. I'm covering the outfit tonight, as I'm putting this out, Worst Person in the World, which is probably my most anticipated of the festival. So I'll be sure to check that out as well. But there's various other films I'll be checking out, and of course, if you follow me on Twitter at LegallyBod, you'll undoubtedly find reviews sort of invading your timeline or newsfeed. I apologise in advance. But that is a wrap for now. Take care, guys. Enjoy your weekends as I put this out. And I'll speak to you very soon. Take care and bye for now. Much love. Bye-bye.